My mom let my brother live rent-free. Then she tried to charge me for visiting. I had stopped expecting fairness a long time ago. Growing up, I learned quickly that my mother had a favorite, and it wasn't me. My older brother, Daniel, could do no wrong in her eyes. If he failed a class, the teacher was out to get him. If he lost a job, it was because the manager was incompetent. If he needed money, she would hand it over without question, even if it meant struggling to pay her own bills. Meanwhile, I was always expected to fend for myself. When I wanted to take piano lessons, I was told they were too expensive. When I needed help with college tuition, I was encouraged to apply for more scholarships. When I had to scrape together rent money for my first apartment, she simply said, "That's what being an adult is about." And yet, Daniel, now well into his 30s, still lived in the house we grew up in. Rent-free, bill-free, responsibility-free. It wasn't even a secret. Our relatives knew, her friends knew, even the neighbors knew. But no one ever challenged her on it. No one ever pointed out the blatant imbalance, except me. But every time I brought it up, I was met with the same dismissive response. He just needs a little more time to get on his feet. Daniel had been getting on his feet for over a decade. Meanwhile, I had built my life from the ground up, without help, without handouts, and apparently, without the same unconditional love my brother was granted so effortlessly. But it wasn't until I returned home for a simple visit that I finally understood just how deep her favoritism ran, because my own mother put a price on my presence. It had been months since I last stepped foot in my childhood home. Not because I didn't care, but because every visit came with an unspoken tension, a weight that settled on my shoulders the moment I walked through the door. The moment I entered, the air was thick with familiarity, the faint scent of lemon cleaner, the creak in the floorboard by the staircase, the outdated floral wallpaper that my mother swore she'd change but never did. And of course, Daniel was exactly where I expected him to be, sprawled out on the couch, a game controller in his hand, half-eaten takeout containers littering the coffee table in front of him. He barely acknowledged me. "Hey," I greeted, setting my bag down near the door. "Yo," he muttered, eyes glued to the TV screen. I wasn't surprised. I had barely settled into the worn-out armchair across from him when my mother emerged from the kitchen, drying her hands on a dish towel. She gave me a quick once-over, then pursed her lips. "You finally decided to visit," she said, her tone laced with something I couldn't quite place. Passive aggression or mild disappointment. Maybe both. "Yeah," I replied, forcing a smile. "I had some free time. Thought I'd drop by." She nodded, but there was something calculating in her gaze, something measured. I should have known then that she had something to say, but I didn't expect what came next. "I was actually meaning to talk to you about something," she started, folding her arms. "Since you've been here for a little while now, I think it's only fair that you contribute a little." I blinked. "Contribute?" She gestured vaguely around the house. "You know, utilities, food, wear and tear. Just a little something to help out, since you're using the space." I let the words settle, my mind racing to make sense of them. I had been here for less than an hour. Meanwhile, Daniel had been here for years. And yet, she was asking me for money. Slowly, I leaned back in the chair, staring at her as if I was seeing first time. "You want me to pay you? For visiting?" Her lips thinned, as if I was being unreasonable. "It's only fair, honey. You have a good job now, and the cost of living isn't cheap. It's just a little contribution." I glanced at Daniel, who was still engrossed in his game, completely unbothered. He didn't pay rent. He didn't pay utilities. He didn't contribute anything. But I was being asked to chip in for a visit. I almost laughed. Almost. I shouldn't have been shocked. I shouldn't have been caught off guard. This was just another example in a long list of injustices I had swallowed over the years. I was the one who had to get a job at 16 to pay for my own clothes while Daniel got brand new sneakers on demand. I was the one forced to take out student loans while my mother covered his community college tuition twice since he flunked out the first time. I was the one who got a lecture about being financially independent while she covered his car payments. I had always known I was treated differently. But this was something else. It was one thing to be denied support. It was another thing entirely to be charged for existing in the same space as my brother. I exhaled sharply, setting my jaw. "You never asked Daniel to contribute. Ever." My mother sighed as if I was exhausting her. That's different. He lives here. You're just visiting. I stared at her, incredulous. Exactly. I don't live here. I don't use the electricity or water every day. I don't eat your groceries. I don't sit on that couch 24/7. I gestured toward my brother, who had yet to even look up. But he does. Daniel finally chimed in, his voice laced with boredom. Don't drag me into your little tantrum. I ignored him, keeping my focus on my mother. Tell me, Mom, if I had lost my job tomorrow and needed a place to stay, would you let me move back in rent-free? She hesitated, just for a second, and that was my answer. I felt something inside me snap. I stood up, grabbing my bag, my movements slow and deliberate. You know what? I said, my voice eerily calm. Don't worry about it. My mother tilted her head. Don't worry about what? Me visiting, I said simply, slinging my bag over my shoulder. I won't make that mistake again. She stiffened. Oh, don't be so dramatic. I cut her off with a small, bitter laugh. No, really. You made yourself clear. My presence comes with a price tag, right? So let's make things easier for both of us. I just won't be here at all. I turned toward the door, and since I arrived, Daniel actually looked up. You're so sensitive. I met his gaze with an unreadable expression. No, I said softly. I just finally learned my worth. And with that, I walked out the door. I didn't expect her to chase after me. And she didn't. Maybe she thought I was bluffing. Maybe she assumed I'd get over it. But I didn't. Days passed. Then weeks. Then months. I stopped calling. Stopped texting. Stopped trying. Silence is an interesting thing. At first it feels unnatural, like something is missing, a void that demands to be filled. But as time stretches on, it becomes a comfort, a shield against the chaos that once seemed unavoidable. In the weeks following my final conversation with my mother, the silence between us grew. I expected her to call, to text, to make some attempt at smoothing things over, but she didn't, and neither did I. I wasn't the one trying to fix things, and I realized how exhausting it had been to constantly seek validation from people who had never truly valued me. I had spent years bending over backward to prove that I was worthy of my family's love, that I deserved even a fraction of the care and consideration they so effortlessly gave my brother. I had tried to be the bigger person, to overlook the blatant favoritism, to swallow my resentment for the sake of keeping the peace. But now I was done. At first, there were moments when I felt the urge to reach out. Old habits die hard, and the instinct to check in, to make sure my mother was okay, to see if Daniel had finally found a job, was deeply ingrained in me. But every time I reached for my phone, I reminded myself of all the years I'd been overlooked, dismissed, and treated like an afterthought. So instead of falling back into the cycle of chasing after people who didn't care, I focused on my own life. And surprisingly, my life flourished without them. Without the constant emotional drain of family drama, I found myself with more energy to invest in my friendships, my career, and most importantly, myself. I started going to the gym regularly, something I had always put off. I picked up new hobbies, reconnected with old friends, and even took a spontaneous weekend trip to the mountains, just because I could. And the best part? I never had to worry about my mother calling to guilt trip me about not doing enough for the family. For once, I was living for me. But of course, peace never lasts forever. It had been nearly 3 months since I last saw my mother, when the first message came through. At first, I almost ignored it. My phone lit up with her name, and instinctively my stomach clenched. For a brief moment I debated whether I even wanted to open it. But curiosity won. I swiped the screen and read the message. Mom, hey, haven't heard from you in a while. Hope you're doing okay. That was it. No apology. No acknowledgement of what happened. Just a casual hope you're doing okay, as if everything was perfectly normal. I stared at the screen, debating how to respond. Should I ignore it? Should I call her out? Should I pretend like nothing had happened? After a long moment, I decided on a simple response. Me. I'm fine. Short. Director. Detached. And apparently, that was all she needed to push forward. The next message came the following day. Mom, you should come by for dinner this weekend. We miss you. We, I knew what that meant. She and Daniel. The same Daniel who hadn't lifted a finger when she asked me for money. The same Daniel who had never once defended me, never once acknowledged the blatant disparity in how we were treated. I stared at the message, my chest tightening with a mix of anger and disbelief. After all this time, she wanted me to just show up as if nothing had happened? I typed out a response, then deleted it. Typed another. Deleted that one too. Finally, I settled on the truth. Me. I don't think that's a good idea. I hit send, expecting that to be the end of it. I should have known better. My phone rang not even a minute later. I hesitated before answering. Hello? I don't understand, my mother said, her voice laced with exasperation. Why are you still holding a grudge? I exhaled sharply, gripping the phone tighter. It's not a grudge, Mom. It's boundaries. She scoffed. Boundaries? Is that what you call ignoring your family now? A bitter laugh escaped me. Funny. That's what you did to me for years. But I guess it only matters when you're the one being ignored. Silence. She had nothing to say. I could have ended the conversation there. I could have just hung up and walked away. But I didn't, because I needed her to hear this. You never once asked Daniel to contribute, I said, my voice steady. Never once expected him to stand on his own 2 feet. But me? The second I stopped by for a visit, you asked me for money? Do you even hear how insane that sounds? Her response was immediate. It's not insane. You're the one with a good job, the one who actually has their life together. He needed help. I clenched my jaw. And I didn't? Silence again. I pushed forward. Do you know what it felt like, watching you bend over backward for him, while I had to figure everything out alone? Do you know what it's like to feel like you don't matter? Like no matter what you do, it'll never be enough. Her breath hitched slightly, but she said nothing. And in that moment, I knew. She would never understand. Not because she couldn't, but because she didn't want to. I let out a slow breath, my grip loosening on the phone. I don't need you to apologize. I don't even need you to admit you were wrong. But I do need you to understand that I'm not coming back. Not like this. Not under these conditions. Her voice was barely a whisper. So, that's it? I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Yeah, that's it. And this time, I hung up first. I had always imagined that cutting ties with my mother, truly, finally severing the connection, would feel like losing a limb. That there would be some gaping wound, something raw and bleeding inside of me, struggling to heal. But instead there was nothing. Not emptiness, not regret, just silence. And for once, it was a silence I welcomed. The days stretched into weeks, and as the seasons shifted, so did my focus. With the weight of my mother's expectations no longer pressing down on me, I found myself breathing easier, sleeping better, existing without the constant undercurrent of anxiety that had followed me for years. I poured myself into my work, taking on projects I had previously hesitated to accept out of fear that a sudden family emergency would pull me away. I spent weekends with friends, going on trips, saying yes to invitations I would have once declined because I was too drained from the emotional turmoil of my family's drama. And slowly, a realization settled into my bones. I had never really lived before this. I had existed in survival mode, constantly on edge, constantly waiting for the next request, the next guilt trip, the next manipulation disguised as a plea for help. But now I was thriving. I was free. But of course, freedom is never something my family was willing to let me have for long. It started with small things. A message here, a missed call there. At first, it was just my mother, sending vague, neutral texts. Hope you're doing well. Just checking in. Haven't heard from you in a while. I ignored them. Then came the guilt trips. Mom, I don't know why you're acting like this. I raised you better than this. Mom, family is family. You can't just cut us off. Mom, one day you'll regret this. I won't be around forever, you know. Each message was a carefully sharpened dagger, designed to slip under my skin and make me question my choices. But I refused to take the bait, until Daniel reached out. It had been months since I'd spoken to my brother. In fact, I couldn't even remember the last time he had called me first. So when his name popped up on my phone screen one evening, I hesitated. I could have let it go to voicemail. Could have ignored it, just like I had ignored my mother's messages. But something in me, curiosity maybe, made me press accept. Hello? Hey. His voice was awkward, uncertain. He was never this hesitant when we were kids, never unsure of himself. I leaned back against my couch, waiting. What do you want, Daniel? He let out a breath. Look, I know things are weird right now. I laughed, short and sharp. Weird? That's an interesting way to put it. He ignored the sarcasm. Mom's been a mess since you stopped talking to her. I rolled my eyes. I'm sure she has. She's serious, though, he continued. She keeps saying she doesn't understand why you're acting like this, and honestly, neither do I. I exhaled slowly, pinching the bridge of my nose. Of course you don't. He paused. What's that supposed to mean? I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tighter. It means you've never had to question whether Mom loved you. You never had to wonder if you were important. You never had to fight for her attention, or beg for her support, or feel like you were nothing more than a financial convenience when it suited her. His silence was deafening. Finally, he cleared his throat. Look, I know Mom hasn't been perfect. I laughed again, louder this time. Perfect? Daniel, she let you live in her house rent-free for years. She paid your bills. She gave you everything without question. Meanwhile, the one time I stopped by for a visit, she asked me to pay her for the wear and tear of my presence. How do you not see the problem with that? More silence. And then, his voice, quieter this time. She's scared, you know. That caught me off guard. Scared of what? Losing you, he admitted. She won't say it outright, but she knows she screwed up. She just doesn't know how to fix it. I let his words sink in, rolling them around in my mind like a stone in my palm. She doesn't want to fix it, I said finally. She just wants to be absolved. There's a difference. I don't know, he muttered. Maybe. But you really think you can just cut her off forever? I sighed. I don't know, Daniel. But I know I can't keep living my life waiting for her to change. He didn't have an answer for that. And for once, I didn't feel the need to fill the silence. Days passed, then weeks. And then, my mother showed up at my doorstep. I had just come home from work when I heard the knock. The moment I opened the door and saw her standing there, I knew. This was it. Her face was tired, her eyes lined with exhaustion. She looked older than I remembered, smaller somehow. Can we talk? She asked. I hesitated. Then finally I stepped aside. She walked in, glancing around as if she had never truly considered what my life looked like outside of her sphere of influence. I crossed my arms. What do you want, Mom? She sighed, running a hand through her graying hair. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. I don't know how to fix this. For a brief moment, I almost felt bad for her. Almost. I exhaled. You can't fix it, Mom. Not with words. Not with apologies that come too late. She swallowed hard. So, what? That's it? You're just going to walk away? I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized something. I didn't hate her. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just tired. I'm not walking away, I said softly. I'm just choosing nicely. She blinked rapidly, as if holding back tears. I don't know how to be a mother to you. I gave her a sad smile. I know. And that was the real tragedy of it all, wasn't it? Not that she had failed me, but that she didn't even know how to try. The night after my mother showed up at my doorstep, I barely slept. Not because I was upset, not because I was second-guessing myself, but because I felt like I had finally reached the end of a long, winding road, a road I had been forced to walk alone, a road littered with broken promises, disappointment, and years of emotional exhaustion. And now, there was nothing left ahead of me but open space. Freedom. The kind of freedom that should have felt exhilarating. But instead, all I felt was tired. 2 weeks passed without a word from my mother. No texts, no calls, no surprise visits. I should have been relieved. And in some ways, I was. But there was still a lingering, nagging thought in the back of my mind. Is this really the end? I got my answer soon enough. It was a Saturday morning when Daniel called again. This time I didn't hesitate before answering. "Hey," I said. "Hey," he responded, his voice heavier than before. "Mom wants to have dinner." I frowned. "With who?" "With both of us." A pause. "She wants to talk. Really talk." I exhaled slowly, rubbing my temple. "Daniel, look, I know you're done with her," he interrupted, his tone edged with something that almost sounded like desperation. "I get it, but just come, okay? One last time." I hesitated. Not because I had any hope left, but because part of me needed closure. A true ending, not a half-hearted exit that left room for unfinished business. "One fine." The relief in his voice was palpable. "Thank you." I should have known better than to expect anything different. The restaurant was an upscale place I wouldn't have chosen for something like this. A place where artificial civility reigned, where conversations were masked with forced smiles and quiet restraint. My mother was already seated when I arrived. She looked composed, carefully put together as always. But there was something else in her expression. Something I almost mistook for vulnerability. Almost. Daniel gave me a quick nod as I sat down, his eyes flicking between us like a referee waiting for the first punch to be thrown. I folded my hands on the table. "All right. You wanted to talk, so talk." My mother inhaled sharply, as if bracing herself. She hesitated. "I don't want things to end like this." I tilted my head. "Like what?" "Like we're strangers." She swallowed. "Like I've lost you." I studied her carefully. "You lost me a long time ago, Mom. You just never noticed." Her eyes flickered with something. Hurt, maybe. Guilt. But guilt only mattered if it came with change. And I had seen no proof of that. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "Come on, you guys, can we just—" "No." I cut him off gently. "We can't just pretend this isn't what it is." I turned back to my mother. "You don't miss me, Mom. You miss what I used to give you. My time, my effort, my willingness to be your emotional punching bag whenever you needed someone to blame." Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. I sighed. "You want a relationship now? Fine. Tell me, what exactly do you think that looks like? What do you want from me?" Silence. The kind that stretches, the kind that suffocates. And in that silence, I had my answer. She didn't know what she wanted. She just didn't want to lose control. I nodded slowly, standing up. "That's what I thought." Daniel looked up, alarmed. "Wait. No." I turned to him. "I love you, Daniel. I really do. But I can't keep doing this." My gaze flicked to my mother one last time. "I'm done." She flinched, just slightly. And for once I didn't feel guilty about it. I didn't block their numbers. I didn't send some dramatic farewell message. I simply stopped engaging. The texts from my mother became less frequent over time, then non-existent. Daniel reached out a few times, and I responded. But there was a distance between us that neither of us knew how to bridge. And maybe that was okay. Maybe some things weren't meant to be fixed. Maybe some stories weren't meant to have a happy ending. But they could still have a peaceful one. And peace, I realized, was worth more than any forced reconciliation. I wasn't waiting for my family to love me the way I deserved. I had already given that love to myself.